All right, so here I have got my Spartan juniper. Haven't been watering this at all. It catches some water from the irrigation and probably also from the AC runoff here. I've got 1, 2, and 3 little gem boxwoods. This one's obviously the newest one. It's done pretty well. It's also probably catching a little water from the irrigation, the sprinkler system, but otherwise I haven't really had to water it. Here I've got my Mexican bush sage. That's this guy here. It'll stay sort of this color. It's apparently an evergreen, and it should flower in the fall. It did flower this spring with these purple velvet blooms. Next to it you see the rudbeckia or black-eyed Susan. Very drought hardy plant. Both of these have done well. I've been out here watering roughly once every 1 to 2 weeks. But especially this black-eyed Susan's pretty established, so despite being on getting southern exposure, it's not wilted or struggled at all. Here I have a heatwave salvia. This is not a native, but it was cultivated, I think, in Australia, so definitely cultivated for the heat. But I've noticed that since it's been hot, it's not really bloomed much, and so I may not be watering or giving it enough moisture, because I can see some, yellow leaves and things like that, but it was definitely a prolific bloomer through the spring. So back there I have a autumn sage, and then kind of in the corner was sort of my sunshine ligustrum rescue, and they're hanging in there. Here is my crape myrtle. I believe this is a catawba. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but this is a semi-dwarf crape myrtle, and this was pretty overgrown here early spring. If you watch previous videos, I really had to get after it and prune out all those dead branches. Plus I had a huge aphid infestation that was just really keeping this from putting on flowers or anything. So once I pruned it back, it did really well, and you can see all of those little suckers. They just are never ending. They just always want to come up. I think crape myrtles are known for that. So, but so far it's doing okay. Here I have just a small mass planting of Angelonia. This is also known as summer snapdragon. These are very drought tolerant, and they filled out quite a bit. I've been sort of pinching them back to get them to be a little bit fuller, so they're coming along nicely. And then I've got yaupon holly, another dwarf yaupon holly, and a fall aster. The fall aster typically blooms in the fall, but it did bloom in the spring, and I still see some blooms trying to come on here and in the summer, so it's done well. Here's my gara, and this was such a beautiful pink. It was like just full of pink blooms throughout the spring, but it really hasn't bloomed much through the summer for me. I don't know if that's just the natural course of this plant. It is supposed to bloom from spring through fall, so I don't know, we'll just kind of see how it goes. Here I have another catawba crape myrtle. Same situation, lots of aphids, overgrown, so I pruned this back as well. Here is a mist flower, and this was full of queen butterflies just a couple of weeks ago. Another dwarf yaupon holly here, and here another fall aster. Here's my Esperanza, Texas native, doing great in all this heat, and lots and lots of blooms. Here's my gara. I believe this is called Passionate Rainbow. Haven't seen it bloom yet, but it's steadily growing. And then here another black-eyed Susan. You can see my crossvine there in the back climbing along the wall. I used some brick clips to kind of help keep those branches somewhat attached to the wall so the wind didn't knock them off, and that's worked out fairly well for me. Here is my Japanese yew, and I did get out here and prune back all the dead branches, but you see I've got a couple more here, and I think that this is just slowly succumbing to some root rot or maybe some sort of infestation I'm not aware of, but I think I'm going to go ahead and replace this in the fall, probably with something that is maybe 4 to 5 feet and evergreen. So I'm still kind of looking for some candidates for that. Here I've got 3 dwarf nandinas, and these are somewhat controversial because they can be invasive. And so, you know, I'd kind of been tossing around the idea of replacing them, and I think I will in the fall with some autumn sage. Because again, the autumn sage is evergreen and it does give you that flowering, you know, from spring through summer. So I think that'll be nice. Here I have a chrysanthemum that I just put in the ground after it overwintered in a greenhouse, and it's been blooming quite a bit. I'll have to probably pinch that back here in a few days to weeks, so that in the fall it'll look nice and full of blooms, hopefully. Here I have a perennial boxwood, and then down below I have a tick seed here. Sort of same thing on the other side, perennial boxwood, another tick seed, another chrysanthemum. Here's another dwarf nandina. Again, because it can be invasive, and I do try to get out here and cut these away, these flower stalks, because this is what apparently these turn into berries and the birds eat them, and then they deposit them everywhere, and then we have a problem. And so so I'll probably get rid of this, and also this smaller Japanese yew, which is sort of doing the same thing that the bigger one is, and so you can kind of see some of the dead branches there. So I'm going to replace these as well with some autumn sage. And so I'll kind of have, you know, autumn sage here, and then I'll have it on over here. So maybe that'll just be a nice balance. And then I have some Gulf Muhly here. It's done really well. I have a golden unimus. This is a non-native, but it just offers that nice yellow pop of color. Really like that a lot. I have a flame acanthus back here that's just started flowering, and I thought this was a goner for sure. I planted it in the heat of summer last year because I didn't know any better, but I did. And but it didn't do much last year, but it came back in the spring slowly but surely. And here it is. And so, and then I've got these 3 here. I think these are forms of Dianella, and they've done really well. Very drought tolerant plant. I've got a Texas sage that's not doing its best. I don't know, I'm just going to kind of let it ride, see if it gets any better. I have got another autumn sage here, and then another mass planting of Angelonia. All right, so here I've got 1, 2, and 3 dwarf yaupon hollies. This is obviously a newer plant, but this one I moved from over here to over here in the mid-spring, and I kind of forgot that I needed to probably water it a little bit more through the summer because it was not established in the new spot. So it's kind of looking a little rough here versus this one where I haven't watered it at all, and because it is so well established, it's totally fine. And so you can kind of see the landscape from this direction. And so if you've got any good ideas for replacements for these dwarf nandinas or even those Japanese yews, I'm all ears. If you found this video helpful so far, please consider liking and subscribing. It does help other viewers like you find this channel. Thanks. All right, so I am starting off with this beauty. This is a desert willow, a Texas native, full of blooms. And so you can kind of see the pollinators. You might be able to see them. I see them all over here, kind of buzzing around. Hummingbirds also love this. It is deciduous, so you won't get that late fall, winter interest, but it really makes up for it in the summer. And so very happy with this. This is an ornamental tree, so we're talking maybe 15 feet, might get a little taller to 20, but very small tree, great for like landscape beds. So coming down from that desert willow, I've got several really nice border options here. I've got a couple of cone flowers, purple cone flower, and then this other variety, I think it's called Cheyenne Spirit. I've got some zinnias here, and I'm going to tell you these have all done very, very well. I've got some liriope, non-Texas native, but this particular clump of liriope is very happy where it's at. I did want to show off this Texas star hibiscus in the back, which I didn't think it would bloom the first year that I put it in, but it's got some buds here. So I'm super excited because those are just stunning. They're huge, huge blooms. And so excited about that. I've got this is a Gulf Muhly, and then here, this is a Texas rock rose, a Mexican bush sage, vetiver grass, Tuscan blue rosemary, and autumn sage. And then I've got a very crispy daylily here, which has gone to seed. So I need to collect those seeds. You know, hindsight 2020, this is probably not a great spot for this daylily, but I will find another spot for it. And but everything else, you know, this is a native, this is a native, this is a native. I mean, they're not necessarily, they haven't grown per se, but they've taken this heat with on top of granite, which is also kind of hot. They've taken the heat without any issue. Mostly these are watered by the sprinkler system, but otherwise I don't really do a ton of watering over there. Here is this liriope, and it's going to have to go. I think it kind of went the way of the Japanese yews in my front yard. Yes, it has chlorosis, which can happen if you don't have the right pH, soil pH, but I think this is well beyond that. I think we've got probably some root rot, and it's just those roots cannot absorb what they need to sustain this plant. So here is a flame acanthus, and this has recently just started flowering, and those flowers are so pretty. The hummingbirds really love those tubular flowers. So this is a Texas native, so great option. Again, not a plant that's taken a lot to do to water or anything like that. It's just really done well on its own. Here I have a mass planting of gazanias. These are African daisies, and I just thought they were kind of cool, and so I'm just kind of letting them do their thing. I have a sea green juniper, a fall aster, a very crispy gara right there. Will it come back? It might. Here is my Texas redbud. This is a western redbud, and then I've got some dwarf yaupon hollies here. I've got a little sunflower that I kind of put behind them that hopefully will kind of get a little taller here. Here's my eastern redbud, also known as a forest pansy. I'm looking to raise the canopy on this somewhat because this is a very leggy type of tree, and it's beautiful. But what I think I have envisioned for this tree is more of a kind of like an umbrella, almost like a mimosa tree, you know, with the long arching branches. But I'll have to slowly raise that canopy. So I may take 1 or 2 branches a year and slowly get it to that sort of look. But again, Texas native does very well. I've got another chrysanthemum there. You can also see this dwarf yaupon holly that's tucked away. Here is that mealy blue sage, Texas native. These things have just exploded. I've got 3 of them. I've got 1 there, 1 back there, and then this guy is huge. And so I don't know if you can see all the little bees around it, but it is always full of pollinators, and it's just so pretty. I trimmed some of it back, and you can kind of see in the middle some of the new growth coming in. But you can also see the flowers, what the flowers look like. But this thing is huge. I'm guesstimating this is probably like a good 4 to, well, probably like a 5-foot spread, maybe 4 feet in height. So this has gotten quite large. So just FYI on those natives, sometimes if they find a happy spot, they're going to get a little bigger than you might expect, which is good. But just something to consider, because you can see it, like I've got plants, dwarf yaupon holly, a catmint, and then another dwarf yaupon holly that are kind of literally being overtaken by this. So just something to consider if you decide to plant those. Here again, I have some black-eyed Susan. These are quite happy. I have another flame acanthus, so you can see this one is further along in the blooming process, and it's just so pretty. And I kind of like that blue and orange and yellow combo, so just very bright and happy. Back here you can see another sea green juniper. All right, so here is an Esperanza. This is a different variety. This one is called Bells of Fire, and it'll get about 5 to 6 feet. So eventually, as it gets more established, I'm hoping it'll kind of fill in this back fence area along with that sea green juniper, and that flame acanthus can get quite tall as well. So that's my hope, to kind of fill in this sort of back corner. Here I have another Gara, and it is just, you see those really long flower stems, and so it really does look like dancing butterflies when the wind gets after it, but very, very pretty. Different variety than the other ones I have. But here are the flowers up close. So super pretty. Here I've got more of those Spartan junipers. They've just done well. Again, if you install these, they'll need water to get established, but don't overwater because they do not like wet feet. And so a lot of people, I think, inadvertently kill these. Definitely try not to put any tree in the summer, because you're just gonna, that's an uphill battle that probably very few will win. So also here is this, I've got these are all pyramidal boxwoods here, and then these yellow bushes are sunshine ligustrum. And these are pretty well established. I've had them in this area for about 2 years, I think, 2 or 3. I did put a soaker hose around it recently because I figured they, with all this heat, they needed some water. So I let that run for about 15 minutes, and they seem to be doing just fine. Here is my Japanese maple. It is on the northeast corner of my home, but it does get a little afternoon sun here, and so you can see it's got some sun scorch here on several of the higher branches. And so of my potted plants, so I've got a blue chalk stick here. Here's my desert rose that is blooming, and I think this is like a double blooming variety because they're really full, but I'm always excited when this blooms. It's so pretty. And I have seen people with this same plant, it's like 12 to 15 feet tall, and they just have it in a pot because it won't survive a freeze or anything, but just a really beautiful plant. So there's that. This is my husband's. I'm not sure what that's called, but it's kind of cool. And then here is my fire stick cactus and my mangave, so Blazing Saddles mangave. So all doing well there. Again, if you've not been on my channel before, this is eventually going to be a butterfly garden in the fall. I hope to be able to plant that out. And so for right now, I'm just trying to kill the grass underneath slowly with this landscape fabric. Here is that succulent planter I planted, and these bird's nest things they're very happy because they're just multiplying over there. But everything's doing very well. I have maybe watered this one time since I put it in, and so it's doing great. So and then along here you see I've got a split leaf philodendron fern, Boston fern. I've got crossvine climbing slowly up that way, a little bougainvillea, and then I have got, this is a Cherokee sedge, chili pequin, and then I have a whale's tongue agave, camellia, and check out this Turks cap. So, it was a pretty decent sized plant when I put it in, but boy, it just took off, and hummingbirds also really love this. This is the other Turks cap I bought that was pretty leggy, but I've just kind of slowly been pruning it back, and you can see it's starting to fill out at the base a little here. So I think with time it'll probably look just as good as this one. Here I have some skullcap, and you can see some of the blanched leaves here. I was really probably not watering this enough when I first put them in, especially since I put them in early summer. But they survived. They just took a bit of a hit there. So since I've been a little bit more consistent with watering, they seem to have flowered a bit better and greened up a bit more. And so I think once they're established, they'll require less water, and that's true for a lot of your native plants. This is a dwarf crape myrtle called, I think it's like a Bellini, and it's just so pretty with all of those beautiful pink or raspberry colored blooms. Another camellia back here, and then you can see my cross vine growing, doing its thing. Here is my iris, and it's blooming, so it's happy camper. Here's that lantana I transplanted, so it's bloomed a few times, but it's just kind of getting established there. Here's another one of those gara like I had in the front, and it's kind of a little lopsided here. I don't know if you can see it. It's like got all these like tall flower stalks on this side and kind of not over here. I guess it maybe just gets more sun over here, but you can see those flowers. They're very pretty. So I'm just going to let it ride and do its thing, and we'll see how it goes. And then you can kind of see in the shadow of the gara here, I've got another lantana. Here is a red yucca, and then I've got a little gem magnolia. That's, interestingly enough, started flowering again. I did give it a nice 20-minute watering session, and so I don't know if that's what's brought on these tiny blooms, but they smell really nice. So normally this just blooms in the spring and the fall, so I guess I was kind of surprised by that. This yellow guy here is called a zexmenia, and I just think that is such a pretty plant in contrast with this granite, and it has done great. I mean, it is just thriving here. Behind it is this other plant, and I'll put the name of it here, but you know, I had it in a pot for a while. I just thought it was cool, and then I didn't know where to put it, but I thought it would be nice tucked in this corner here, and it has just taken off. And it cracks me up because like the hummingbirds, they're like, this should be something I can get into, but they're like just struggling how to get into these, like in here, and to get the nectar. So maybe they're getting after it, but they always look like they're slightly confused when they get to these. But I just thought this was such an interesting plant. So, and it's very happy. So click on this video if you're interested in seeing how my vegetable garden is holding up in all of this triple digit heat. Y'all take care.